Good day. On November 18, the following rumors, gossip, insiders and opinions circulated on the Ukrainian sidelines. Backstage rumors. On the sidelines, there were rumors that there was a commotion in the president's office because of the swing that the Republicans in the United States have now begun to arrange, demanding a full audit of the aid allocated to Ukraine. The risk is that if the audit starts, then the allocation of any assistance to Ukraine will be frozen for the duration of the audit, and this can be from several months to a year. In such scenarios, the Ukrainian economy will burst. If some defect is found, then the image of Zelensky the hero will turn into a corrupt official, who, hiding behind the war, simply chopped the greens. Inside. The source said that the office of the president is preparing for a hard winter and a protracted war in 2023. The general staff gave an analysis of the strategic situation on the front to Zelensky. In winter, the front line will be practically frozen, and in the spring the battles will move into a positional stage, due to the limited capabilities of the armed forces of Ukraine. Inside. The source said that the office of the president continues to persuade Western countries to peace talks, which need to freeze the conflict and implement the #Sullivan_formula. This is especially necessary for the Biden administration, which is preparing for the elections and wants to lower oil prices, which is why the missile attack on Poland was put on the brakes and blamed on Ukraine. Layout. Advisor to the head of the office of the president Misha Podolyak confirmed insiders that Bankova's goal is not to completely defeat the Russian Federation on the battlefield. Let's say this is unrealistic, but to provoke a revolution within. They tried to use the Kherson case as a pretext for building up the Russian society and complete Zrda. They threw in the thesis that everything was going to drain and a world agreement, that even Putin agreed to leave. In the Russian near Kremlin get-together even such messages went that they were well thrown by the Center of Information and Psychological Operations Ukraine. The second point is why Podolyak said that there was no need to defeat all of Russia, but enough to take Luhansk, Donetsk. This is an attempt to bring down the degree of disappointment not only among ordinary citizens, but also among the armed forces of Ukraine, who understand that this war has no end, but to live getting worse. Simply put, this is the same thesis: you have to be patient, victory is about to happen. Now the main goal of Bankova is to inspire the Russian society with complete disappointment, anger towards the Kremlin and loss of hope. Also impose a message that everything around is lost. Watching. Opinion. When the White House and the Kremlin simultaneously refute negotiations on Ukraine without Ukraine, then we should seriously think about what game Washington is playing. Especially after the leaks in the media that Sullivan discussed drafting his formula with Patrushev for several weeks. Russia also denied discussing with the Americans the topic of negotiations with Ukraine. Inside. The office of the president is disappointed by the Western reaction to the rocket attack on Poland and attributes this to the fact that Britain is gradually starting to leave the Ukrainian case, leaving the main place of the United States. This is due, first of all, to a set of internal problems that allow London to have limited participation and support for Kyiv, which is clearly not enough for Ukraine. Opinion. The criminal always returns to the scene of the crime apparently. The topic of refusing to evacuate before the war haunts Zelensky. The day before yesterday, during an interview, he again admitted that he was offered to carry out a complete evacuation of Kyiv. If there are no people in the city, then there will be Mariupol in every city, there will be death everywhere. Well, you understand. People, children, women, old people became the shield of the capital. Most of the victims of the first days of the war could have been avoided if Zelensky had announced the evacuation even before it began. To this the president answers clearly: if there were no people in Ukraine, we would have lost the state. You still have to answer for this, no matter how much you talk about this topic at manual press conferences. Opinion. NATO and missiles, results. The case with missiles in Poland was the most losing for Zelensky since the beginning of the war. The president's office made a mistake with the choice of communication strategy. The categorical and unjustified attribution of the missiles that fell on Prtsevadov to Russian ones came into conflict with the interests of the United States and the entire NATO. The mistake was to overestimate support for NATO. The Allies would not have given a military response even if these missiles were really Russian, and not from the S-300 air defense of the armed forces of Ukraine. Mikhail Saakashvili made exactly the same mistake in 2008. The Poles, who have been under the control of the United States for 20 years longer than Ukraine, quickly corrected themselves. After the shock of the first hours, the rockets were named Ukrainian. The reason for the error is clear: Zelensky and the United States have different goals in this case. Zelensky needed to drag NATO into the war, the US has the opposite goals: to continue the conflict at this level of escalation. Thus, the incident, instead of strengthening support for Ukraine, brought a demonstration of the boundaries of support for Ukraine and Zelensky personally. NATO is not ready to enter into a direct war with the Russian Federation. Gossip. No matter how anyone says, the process of demonopolization of the dollar continues. China and the Russian Federation are moving to settlements in national currencies for the supply of energy resources. Payment will be made in equivalent shares, in yuan and rubles. This means one thing: the world game continues. Opinion. The topic of capturing the eastern crises is becoming more and more popular in Poland. The idea of the return of Lvov seizes the masses. The celebration of the Polish National Day showed this. There is something to think about. Opinion. The political crisis in Britain was beneficial to the United States in order to move London away from the Ukrainian case. Bankova understood this and hoped to change everything using a missile attack on Poland, but Washington clearly showed who was now in charge. Now everything indicates that Britain is gradually leaving one of the leading roles in supporting Ukraine, giving way to the palm of the United States. The general decline of the British economy led to this state of affairs. Inflation in the country reached 11.1% in October in annual terms, which was the highest in 41 years, and the budget deficit exceeded £50 billion. As a result, the UK is losing its status as an influential country due to economic turmoil, and the government has to raise taxes and cut spending, as the financial outlook for the state is very bleak. Opinion. Why does America need peace agreements, freeze, on Ukraine? Answer. 1. The United States will only lift those sanctions that it wants to lift. 2. Sanctions led to inflation, including in the USA. The Republicans are actively manipulating this as you can see, successfully. Freeze is a non-victory for Russia, which will be presented by Biden as a victory for his administration, because before the war, few believed that Ukraine would survive. 3. The West is actively campaigning to train the Ukrainian military. They believe that more military men will be trained better and faster than the Russian Federation. 4. The West has actually exhausted the stockpiles of some weapons. 155mm shells are being transported from South Korea. Every day without an active war, these are the saved weapons, already transferred to the armed forces of Ukraine and the delivery of new equipment. 5. It is more profitable for the West to drag Ukraine with living energy than without it. Tritely, each next stage is more expensive. 6. Freezing will transfer the war to the information cognitive plane, and there you yourself know who is stronger. See you soon.